let's go straight into section 1, this week in Bitcoin. So, as I said in the intro, we've had the largest 4-day crash, let's call it, in Bitcoin since FTX. Now, what does it actually mean? So if you are going through this for the first time, if you're a long-term subscriber, you'll know, because we shared so many since I first uploaded those monetary reform videos around the time that Bitcoin launched, and all of the crashes and everything we've been through together as Bitcoin went from 0 to over $100,000 as it is today. But we just got a 25% correction. Now, after a hack, and this was what we had, I covered it last week, the Bybit hack. The Bybit hack is the largest hack that has ever happened in our sector, in our industry. Now, it was mainly around a multi-signature smart contract for Ethereum from the cold wallet, and I'll dive a little bit deeper into what that actually means so you can understand that it's really got nothing to do with Bitcoin and the irrationality of the market because of all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and the weakness of people not understanding exactly what we teach in This Week in Bitcoin, Macro, and Geopolitics. You can't see the bigger picture here. So they are selling to the manipulators that want to buy them from them as well. So this was the largest exchange hack that we've ever seen. Now, at the time, the peak of the market, the peak price we've had is $109,000 per Bitcoin. And I'm not looking at the live price, but we're currently trading at approximately $80,000. And those people that like to trade and like to look at the technical analysis and draw lines on charts think that there might be about 75K Bitcoin. And who knows? Who cares? The point is that that's only a 25% correction from the top to where we are right now. Now, previous exchange hacks have led to approximately a minimum of 30%, downward to 60%. Some of them in the extremes, like Mt. Gox, led to approximately a 75% in 80% correction. I remember when Bitcoin was over $1,000, manipulated by Willybot, which was a bot created by Mark Capellis and the team at Mt. Gox, after they bought a exchange that was missing 80,000 Bitcoin from the founder of XRP and Ripple, what's his name? Jeb McCaleb. And there was 80,000 Bitcoin missing. And so he built a bot in order to try and manipulate his way out of it and find those Bitcoin. The price of Bitcoin went to over $1,000. And after the exchange hack, I think we came down to about $200, if memory serves me well. So that is what's normal after an exchange hack in those early days. We are so liquid right now that the only thing that led to the 25% crash and whatever comes next was the fact that everybody was over leveraged and was trading futures and options, which are financial weapons of mass destruction that are constructed from the fiat currency money printing world. Those of you that live in the fiat currency money printing world, you'll know that you have to leverage debt in order to beat inflation. And it is designed for you to go deeper and deeper into debt. And even if you're rich, leverage your assets so that you can support the profits of the banks and financial institutions, which are the net beneficiaries of the creators of digital currency like dollars and euros and pounds, that use the central banking economic hitmen in order to try and prop up the system and manipulate you. The Federal Reserve has had 20 pump and dumps ever since it was created, and it required World War I to create it. But anyway, it is the levers of the fiat currency derivatives world which is causing these market corrections. And if you are engaging in those gateway drugs instead of owning Bitcoin, then you will probably either learn your lesson after you end up with no Bitcoin because you saw it as a weapon in order to leverage debt and try and end up with more Bitcoin, or you figured out that actually Bitcoin was a gift that the world gave us. It was a peaceful resistance against the central banking system. It gave us a way of opting out by owning our own Bitcoin. And by owning our own Bitcoin without the financial terrorists like BlackRock in the middle, where they issue a paper version, IOU, a Bitcoin, and then use that in order to try and persuade you to pay a derivative so that they can charge interest, so that that interest can prop up a debt-based Ponzi scheme called the dollar, so that you can have a perpetual cycle of dollar-denominated debt, which increases exponentially forever, where individuals go deeper into debt until they can no longer afford to live, and they supplement their income on credit cards and payday loans as the rich use these derivatives in order to steal more money for you. And then they use their other there are other institutions like the International Monetary Fund in order to get the world into debt, which then can be used in order to blackmail people. And if you don't follow those blackmails, as we'll be covering in the macro section, you end up on the wrong side of war, death, and destruction, because the proof of weapons network is built upon a debt-based Ponzi scheme that requires death, destruction, and violence in order to survive. And so if you are using Bitcoin in order to use those financial weapons, mass destruction, in order to try and end up with more Bitcoin, then you might be on the wrong side of a liquidation and the manipulation of those that control the money to manipulate the price short term so that they end up with all the long-term gains. There was $5.7 billion worth of Bitcoin and Ethereum options that expire today. There was billions of dollars of liquidations from those that were leveraging debt to try and just speculate on the price of Bitcoin. Imagine being given the gift and it is disrespected so badly by fiat currency money printers that don't understand the value of Bitcoin in order to just try and end up with more shitty fiat currency, which is causing all the wars and problems that we are experiencing in the world today. That is why right now we are at record levels of depression, suicide, degeneracy, debt, and we are building a humankind which is trying to figure out how to deal with the pension crisis by launching all sorts of covert operations, which is leading to low birth rates and the destruction of humanity. That is how the incentives of the proof of weapon network work. Now, if you have been following my content all along, you'll know that your job, if you accept the challenge, is to own more Bitcoin this month than the previous month, which means you can't lever it up because you might violate your rules. Remember the one time when I broke my rules, I fell for the trick of taking a tiny percentage of my Bitcoin, borrowing against it. I ended up depositing it at Celsius, taking a loan against it, and ended up having that Bitcoin destroyed to teach me the lesson. Simon, don't mess around. Bitcoin is the resistance against the debt-based Ponzi scheme. Don't mess around with the debt-based Ponzi scheme. And yet everybody is being fooled into it right now, especially as more and more financial institutions want you to deposit your Bitcoin with them. And when they deposit your Bitcoin with them, they want you to take a loan against it. And when you take a loan against it, they want to construct a derivative product in order to pay fiat currency interest in a debt-based Ponzi scheme that always leads to the same result. And if you are fortunate enough and lucky enough to exit it at the right time, in this less than zero-sum game, just like the casino where the house always wins, the printers of the fiat currency always win that game, and you might escape velocity, but you don't need to do that. So your job is to end up with more Bitcoin this month than the previous month. And if you follow that rule, every single person that has done that will be watching this little correction and saying, I get to buy more Bitcoin with my fiat currency 25% cheaper than what I bought it last month. And that is how you win the game. That is how you take down the Fed. That is how you live outside the care of the fiat currency price of Bitcoin. And you get to hack the system with the gift that Satoshi Nakamoto gave us, backed up by the world's largest distributed supercomputer called Bitcoin proof of work that no government can take down, no central bank can take down. They tried. They had to create a PSYOP in 2022 where the Federal Reserve created a pump and dump scheme in order to say, hey, BlackRock, we'll gift you. We're going to put corrupt regulators in the SEC and we'll gift you some Bitcoin so that you can persuade people to put their money and hold it through your ETF so that you can catch up because you laughed at us and basically you had to join us. But you use the old weapons, and hopefully anybody that is watching these videos does not fall for those weapons. And if you are new, welcome. We cover and break it down every single week so that you don't fall for the same tricks. And incredibly sadly, here are some stories, because some people use these fiat currency money printing versions of blockchain assets and meme coins and shitcoin casinos and leverage futures options rather than just sticking with Bitcoin. In fact, we had one message in the blockchain. His name, if you didn't see it, was Hugh Lindsay. And Hugh Lindsay, I believe from China, purposely burnt $1.6 million of ETH and donated $5.3 million worth of Bitcoin to WikiLeaks. And Lindsay basically said and put a message in the blockchain because I believe suffering from such mental illness that we end up doing crazy stuff when we engage in these fiat currency money printing games as well. So Lindsay, basically, he embedded a secret story in his transaction because you can send a message with your transaction, and basically explained how, in his words, he's been taken over by mind control since birth. And he was trying to send us a message, and he ended up sending all his Bitcoin to WikiLeaks. While we appreciate the contribution, we need people to stay mentally strong. And the way people stay mentally strong is they stay away from the drugs and the products of fiat currency that take people down these destructive paths and take us into these dark places. Well, anyway, whether it was a message because there was real mind control being engaged and he was sending us a message, or whether there's mental illness, we do not know. But at the same time, I saw hack, which is being attributed to the North Korean group Lazarus. Apparently, the FBI came out and said and confirmed that this is state-sponsored hacking from North Korean group Lazarus. I'm not sure whether that's one big whole psyop anyway, because I don't trust anything anymore after everything that we've been learning how the world works. But anyway, they took responsibility for the Bybit hack. And fortunately, Bybit said that they had enough to actually cover it. Now, let me just go through a little bit deeper into the Bybit hack, because now we got more details. Basically, users panicked as soon as the hack was understood. And they withdrew approximately $4 billion from the exchange, which, by the way, if you are storing money on an exchange, it's because you are engaging in the cancer of fiat with your Bitcoin. You're either engaging in the altcoin casinos, money printed, pre-mined, whatever they may be, or you're using leverage and you're storing them at a Bitcoin. Because if you are just storing them at an exchange, then 50% had to withdraw them because it was probably their money there in order to leverage and trade. But anyway, the leverage and trade. But anyway, so that was, they were held on the exchange. About 50% of it was withdrawn, which was the value of about $4 billion. So we're led to believe that there was about $8 billion being stored on the exchange. And we got the correction. Now, the correction was weaker than any correction I've seen. And this was the largest heist, probably in the banking system, but definitely in the cryptocurrency sector that we have ever seen as well. Now, I do have to say, having seen how they handled the situation, you can say whatever you want about what the exchange and whether it should have happened in the first place, and you can people will investigate. But once the hack had actually happened, the way they treated it was exceptionally well. And I do have to give credit for that. Now, the lesson obviously is never store your exchange, never store at an exchange. Ideally, learn self-custody of your Bitcoin, and that is the way to go. But even if you are going to be, you're not ready for self-custody. In our Bitcoin Wealth Builder program, we teach everyone how to get a self-custody setup, which we're going to be doing later this year. We do it every 4-year cycle, and I'm going to be doing the next one later this year. But even if you're not ready for self-custody yet, at least use some kind of qualified custody service, not an exchange. The exchange is worse because they're creating all these fiat currency futures products, and they've got chain after chain after chain. They got coin after coin after coin, rather than having a simple setup designed for custody with audit requirements, and not having to use those coins for different types of products. And anyway. But the hack happened because Bybit had what they explained as a 3-wallet setup. The first is that they had a hot wallet, which is how you process very fast withdrawals, which is connected to the platform, connected online. You normally, as an exchange, minimize the amount in hot wallet. Now, a custodian would have a longer time to withdraw, like a Bank to the Future, because we don't hold large sums in the hot wallet. And it's more designed for people that are looking to do the storage rather than do the trading. They have a warm wallet, which is a structure whereby it requires biometrics of multiple people, but it is connected and codified. And then they had a cold wallet set up. Now, the cold wallet was disconnected, is completely outside of the Bybit system, but it requires a multi-signature in the case of Ethereum. Now, when it comes to Ethereum, unlike Bitcoin, you really, more and more people engage in programmatic versions of Ethereum, and they have these things called smart contracts. Now, some of that does exist on top of Bitcoin, but it's a very, very different environment. Now, when the founder of the exchange, which is required in a multi-signature environment, they had to sign the signature to move approximately 30,000 ETH in order to top up the warm wallet. He had to sign that with his Ledger wallet. And so that was done with the Ledger wallet, but because it's multi-signature, it has a smart contract on top. And so this scenarios smart contract on top. And so this scenarios where the multi-signature opened up different attack vectors, and the North Korean Lazarus hacking group were able to get through that. And rather than just taking the 30,000 ETH, it turned out that it was actually all of the ETH that was on that cold wallet, which was 400,000 ETH. Now, they claim that all other ETH wallets were fine, and that they had their warm wallet set up with, safe wallet and various other things. But the breach was because of the multi-signature wallet. So I don't want to go too geeky into this stuff, but, there's lessons to learn there. And when we work, in the Bitcoin Wealth Builder program, helping people set up their cold storage, you have to consider these various things. And it's why the simple strategies are often the best in order to escape velocity from the proof of weapons network. The CFO allegedly confirmed to the CEO that they could cover the ETH amount. So immediately he knew that they had enough ETH in order to cover it, but they knew that there would be a run on the bank. And when there was a run on the bank, they needed to, one, work on the public statements, and secondly, make sure that when people are withdrawing, they don't have to stop withdrawals, which means you need to make further transactions. And if you can't do them fast enough, it can create a panic. And you end up with a situation, as we've seen with other exchanges, where they hold withdrawals and then maybe they're not in a position to cover it. But in this case, they said they were in a position to cover it. So immediately, once they knew they could cover it and they agreed to cover it, they did some public statements. And he came on a video and did an AMA, explained exactly what happened, and prepared for the bank run so that they could process all withdrawals. That required borrowing some against the collateral, whatever it needs to be. I don't want to unwind all of that, but that's why you don't store at exchanges, because That's the types of things that happen when you're dealing with exchanges that have leveraged products. That is very different from a custodian, which is simply storing it for you without having to create all these products on top that create all these compromise layers. Well, anyway, about 50% was withdrawn. So it proved that at least they had enough to cover the 50%. For all I know, all withdrawals were processed. Maybe some would be saying otherwise, but that seems to be the case. And then they launched a $140 million recovery bounty program for anybody that can participate in helping recover any of the cryptos. Now, remember, at Bank to the Future, we supported Bitfinex in the 2016 hack, where there was a hole and they did need to halt withdrawals. And they launched a debt token where you could lend the money to the exchange, and that was convertible into shares in the company. And we actually produced one of the best recoveries out there because the token traded a low at 30 cents. And then the shares ended up at a peak of about $16 and paid out lots of dividends from the profits and various other things. But, you know, in this case, they were able to go straight back up, cover the funds. This is the largest hack in history. Now, that is what led to the correction. At the same time, as we'll be covering in the macro section, you know, we're having the dismantling of the fiat currency proof of weapons network and a transition to a world of artificial intelligence-backed stable coins that I've always been talking about and preparing people for over these years. So anyway, that's what happened at the Bybit side. So you've got the correction from the traditional market at the same time as the largest hack. And so far, we've stabilized around 80,000. Maybe it goes back further. Maybe it doesn't. Some people will say I need to hit my target at 60,000 until I buy. And then others that are trying to do that, maybe it never gets there, which is why the strategy that's always worked for myself and other investors is just buy each month at whatever the price is. And continue to do that and own more Bitcoin this month than the previous month. And then you can engage in a little bit more complex things once you've done that habit for at least 4 years, I would say, from all of the investors that I've seen that have life-changing wealth based upon those simple strategies. Now, as I said, we actually had this mental illness stuff because those that are on the wrong side of the fiat currency proof of weapons network that are messing around with all these meme coins and pre-coins and all sorts, pre-mined coins. There was a crypto trader that I saw. It was a really, and I don't know whether it's fake or real, but it looked pretty damn real to me. You don't know with deep fakes today. But somebody came on, a crypto trader, and on a video took his own life because he lost a bunch of money or what was a large money to him. On this meme coin, shitcoin casino that is the pump fun, and he did it on live stream in front of everybody. It was really disturbing to watch, whether it was real or not, but it looked pretty real to me. But on the video, he lost $500, which was a lot of money that he had built up. He was messing around in meme coins and various other things. He loaded up a gun on the video. And then he said on the video, you know, if I die, make me a meme coin. And then proceeded to actually trigger the revolver live on a video so that other people could create a meme coin. Now, I don't know whether that meme coin was created. I was so disturbed by what I watched that I stopped investigating any further. But it just makes me think how many people on the wrong side of the fiat currency proof of weapons network are going down the wrong path rather than taking the gift of Bitcoin. And we're starting to get, you know, North Korean hackers and messages from people in blockchains as they contribute all their money to WikiLeaks and suicides on camera. It's truly, truly sad. And we need to make sure that more and more people have the long-term vision that Bitcoin gives you, the time preference to be able to understand that there is an escape velocity, the information they need to understand that we've been lied to by our media, lied to by our governments, but there is hope on the other side that they don't end up doing this. And talking about craziness, we also had Kanye West came out and said that he's going to launch his own blockchain, and that he's going to putting tweets out there that he's going to launch some kind of meme coin connected to Nazism and various other things. And then suddenly he said he's going to launch them next week. And then he deletes all of his tweets and disappears. And apparently he sold all of his accounts, as we get this disgusting things, this crazy types of behavior. We need people with, able to escape the proof of weapons network, able to bring a level of hope and vision for the future, because this has always been the game of a debt-based Ponzi scheme. Those that constructed the debt-based Ponzi scheme. We need mental stability in the world. We need people with strong hands. And I have found that when money becomes less of an issue for you because you're not stuck to a depreciating fiat currency that rewards those that leverage debt, that you're able to create a resistance against all of the tricks that come from that. And we've hit record highs in suicide rates, as I said. And I think it's because the governments have lied to us so much. And now we're going through that cleansing moment where people are starting to get more and more of the truth. And the central banks, they're essentially, working to what's the next strategy? What's the next agenda? They've got the whole world deep in debt. When the whole world is deep in debt, you get wealth inequality. When you get wealth inequality, you wipe out the middle class. When you wipe out the middle class, you get the rich richer, the poor poorer, and then no one to buy the products of the rich. And so they become more and more crony capitalists, and then they bribe politicians in order to engineer the system in their way. And they've got their escape plan anyway. The others are getting closer and closer down the debt cycle in a debt trap, enslaved to the system, and end up looking for meme coins in order to try and get some escape velocity away from it. So what are the lessons? The solutions to exchange hacks is self-custody at the very least, or at least if you're not ready for that, go with a qualified custodian that's not constructing, derivative products and debt-based products on top of pristine collateral or pristine Bitcoin. The solution to liquidations, which is what causes the crash when everyone's trying to use derivatives, is just don't leverage. Don't use it. You don't need to. The returns from Bitcoin, not financial advice, have been too great to even need to play in those games, as long as you create a longer term strategy for yourself. And the solution to price crashes is just do not trade. And don't go too deep into the shitcoin casino, which are designed, almost all of them are designed to part away from the pre-mined money printers and the VC insiders that are getting favorable terms in order to part you away from your shitcoins so they can convert it into Bitcoin, and you end up with no Bitcoin on the other side of it, because that's what they actually wanted. The decentralized Bitcoin proof of work network, the ability to own your own money with no bank in the middle, the ability to send it with no government permission, and the ability to hold it with a fixed supply and a monetary policy that no central bank can change. So after watching all of this anyway, it gave me a bit of a kick up the arse on the urgency trying to get the Bitcoin Wealth Builder program out and make sure everyone's got the tools that they need. Right, let's move on from all of that stuff. It's a very important message. That's how you handle the crashes. The crashes are really exciting. If this lasts lower and lower prices for longer, it means that is your opportunity to accumulate the Bitcoin when everyone else is trying to buy it at record highs. That's the time, that you get better value for your fiat currency if you have the simple principles. So now we need to recollaborate and reprogram our brains into what is actually happening right now. The sheer amount of news that is coming out of the world right now as we witness the dismantling of the fiat currency proof of weapons network, and we see countries trying to adjust to this. We had announcement So the Biden administration was doing the bid of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve installed Gary Gensler in order to create a corrupt environment within our sector, and sue all of the players so that they could do the bidding for the shareholders of the Federal Reserve, take out the banks that were servicing crypto companies in Operation Choke Point 2.0, and then use a inflation is transitory hike to use the bond markets in order to crash those banks, bail out the ones they wanted to support, and essentially wipe out the shitcoin casinos that they installed, like Sam Bankman-Fried FTX and Alex Majinsky's Celsius, and wipe them out, and then use that in order to hand people or the industry to try and trick people into taking their Bitcoin and handing it over to custody with BlackRock. Now, that was the PSYOP. But we are witnessing the dismantling of that PSYOP right now. And it has been a recognition that the US dollar needs to reform, as I've always laid out over the years. Before I was a Bitcoiner, I was a monetary reformer, exposing the proof of weapons network. Now it is imploding upon itself. There will be, I believe, an impending tension between the creator, the Federal Reserve, the perpetrator that took over constitutional America and replaced it with a debt-based fiat Ponzi scheme based upon the model of the Bank of England. All of those SEC investigations, the Federal Reserve did that. And now the new administration has recognized we actually need all of that stuff, because Bitcoin and stable coins are our way of transitioning out of a broken system. And so now there has been a halt, and the Trump administration has come along and said, right, let's change that. Let's hand over the ability to create the dollar, whereby we can issue treasuries, back it by stable coins, and hand over those stable coins to the technocrats. And then we'll invest in retreating to artificial intelligence and make sure we get our energy markets, our rare earth markets, our semiconductor chips, all in line with data centers across the region, so that we can then make sure that we do the bidding of the technocrats and hand them over stable coins that can then take on the banks through full reserve banking rather than fractional reserve banking, because we're now changing to an artificial intelligence based system rather than a proof of weapons network that requires death, destruction, and is being exposed. So we are witnessing the exposure of all of the constructs of the deep state that allowed everything to happen. And now the SEC is saying, right, new people, let's gut out the old, put in the new. Let's embrace this industry, and let's make sure that we have a good environment within America to harness some of this entrepreneurial capital to build the technology that's needed to remain competitive. So the brakes were pushed on. The SEC leadership has all changed, and now all of the SEC investigations are being reversed one at a time. We had announcements. Consensus, which is the parent company of MetaMask, the SEC case gone. Coinbase, SEC case gone. Gemini, SEC case dropped. Robinhood, SEC case dropped. Uniswap, SEC case dropped. Decentralized exchanges. OpenSea, NFT marketplace, the SEC case dropped. Now there's one missing, which I hope we're going to see soon, because I'm also a shareholder in that company, which is Kraken. And for some reason, we haven't seen that one. Hopefully we shall see that soon. But we saw an awful one, which exposes the corruption of the system. So make sure you understand that we are replacing one form of problem with another form of problem. And this one is the crony capitalism from the crypto bros. So one of the cases that was dropped with the SEC is the case against Tron and Justin Sun. Now, Justin's son is somebody that was engaging in the take a copy of Ethereum, press copy and paste, launch your own blockchain, pre-mine yourself, make yourself rich, and try and create a use case, cheaper, faster, better, and say we're better than ETH, we're better than Bitcoin, and then use that money in order to get as much Bitcoin as you can. And as Bitcoin goes up, you invest in building power. It's like the new lobby group from the crypto mafia, as it were. Justin Sun was one of those people. He created Tron, executed the model, ended up acquiring exchanges like Poloniex, which is a crypto-to-crypto exchange, I believe had a hole, and then acquiring like Huobi, which was one of the large exchanges in China. And then there was an investigation because essentially he was using these stable coins to probably cover up holes and try and make money in order to plug those holes. And that investigation is dropped. Why was it dropped? Well, we know if you're a long-term watcher of Bitcoin Hard Talk, you'll know that Trump, through World Liberty Financial, which has shareholders with Steve Witkoff, who's representing America in the negotiations in the Middle East and various other foreign relations, is also, that company is looking to launch a stable coin and a DeFi platform and a governance token. Essentially Trump's family are the main beneficiaries to that. So I'm sure Trump's looking at what is the reform of the financial system. I want to make sure that my family owns it as we construct this new, stablecoin based model that's going to emerge. He was doing a token sale to raise 300 million, and it wasn't doing too well, as you know. But suddenly Justin Sun agreed to invest 75 million. And after investing 75 million, suddenly it went up to 300 million and it was oversubscribed. And then the 5 cents price suddenly became about 50 cents. Sorry if I got the prices wrong, but I think it was like a 10x more or something like that. I'll have to go back through old notes. You can put in the comments if you know. But anyway, it said that we're going to now raise another 200 million. And now they ended up with 500 million, and they ended up buying wrap Bitcoin and all sorts of other stuff in order to get a ride on top. Remember what I told you, the number one use case of these things is to part you from your Bitcoin so they end up with their Bitcoin. Now they wrap it in ETH and all sorts of things that they do. But anyway, they ended up raising 500 million, and Justin Sun was the person that helped that happen. And lo and behold, we have this Justin Sun and the SEC case drop there. Now, I might be connecting dots. That's what we do. It's somewhat speculative. But remember, don't rule out the possibility that the other crypto lobbies will eventually decide that Justin Sun is no longer a useful weapon and will say he's part of the Chinese Communist Party in order to try and wipe him out, to make sure that the money that is being slushed around with the US government ends up in their project, as rather than just focusing on Bitcoin strategic reserves, America's saying we're going to have a crypto stockpile. And the crypto lobbies are all trying to make sure that their fiat currency money printing shitcoin casino is part of the strategic stockpile of America. Anyway, at the same time, the SEC met with Michael Saylor last week, and that was to discuss establishing a framework for digital assets. And look, we know how the game works. Follow the money. Michael Saylor really wasn't into Bitcoin. Michael Saylor got into Bitcoin, and then Michael Saylor used a company, a software company, which was around during the dot-coms. And we know that the internet companies that are around in the dot-coms tend to have access to technology that is used in order to, from, whether it's military or government contracts. And so he's got a data software company, goes through the whole dot-com boom and bust, 2008 financial crisis, and then uses Bitcoin in order to create a strategy to utilize and scoop up as much Bitcoin for the company. And because people weren't able to invest in Bitcoin before the SEC and the Fed and FDIC did Operation Choke Point 2.0, people were buying MicroStrategy shares instead until they approved the BlackRock ETFs. And so now it's accumulated approximately 500,000 Bitcoin, 500,000 Bitcoin. And once you are that big and strategically important, you become an asset of the deep state at some point. And so probably MicroStrategy is going to be changing into a crypto bank. And then it's going to be looking at how people can borrow against their Bitcoin and construct fiat currency proof of weapons products on top of those that Bitcoin accumulation. And if it turns out that America needs to strategically, like it did during the Federal Reserve pump and dump, remember in the 1920s, the Federal Reserve got World War I. Then after World War I, you had peace in 2018. Then it pushed into a using debt-based Ponzi scheme to try and get all the bucket shops to get you to buy stocks on derivatives, and the birth of the the derivatives markets for speculation. And then they used interest rates in order to crash the market, accumulate those stocks at a significant discount, and then drive the world into the Great Depression of the 1930s. And in 1933, they said, everybody that has gold, you need to convert your gold into $20 of Federal Reserve notes, which was later repriced into $35 of Federal Reserve notes. And then they managed to get all of the gold from the people and give them a fiat currency proof of weapons network instead. Now we're being asked to audit Fort Knox, see if the gold is still there. That was probably some of it part of the original confiscations, but we don't know what paper contracts the Federal Reserve put on top of that. And as we are witnessing the dismantling of that network, maybe it will, be audited. We'll cover a bit more about that when we get into the macro. Anyway, that could happen with those that own MicroStrategy. It could be nationalized, where if America needs to strategically reform its money, end up with a bunch of Bitcoin, it could decide that it will nationalize MicroStrategy. And it could be that at this stage, Michael Saylor, when you get to a certain point, strategically important, you become an asset of the deep state. And he may be one of those technocrats or deep state. We do not know. Or he may be just a genuine person that has done an incredible job in order to get more and more people into Bitcoin, but do it in the corporate level as well. We shall keep watching, but I'm very skeptical. And, it is a difference between owning Bitcoin yourself and owning it through a stock. Anyway, so he met with the SEC to come up with this framework. And, it's digital assets rather than Bitcoin. Which is interesting in itself. That's the direction that everything's going within America as well. And the SEC came out and gave more guidance. They said that meme coins are not securities. So what this means is that all the Huat2s and all of the Trump meme coins and Melania meme coins and the Milei meme coins, which was launched by the same sniper, that is designed in order to take some Bitcoin from you or end up with the currency that they wanted, they're no longer securities. And so therefore it fits in with the definition of if you commit fraud, you commit fraud. And we will see what happens there. But they are not under the remit of the Securities and Exchange Commission. And finally, we are getting clarity on what fits in where. And this is the first one. So meme coins, if you commit fraud, then you are subject to all the consequences of committing fraud. But it is not a regulated product because the SEC doesn't want to engage in whack-a-mole like a war they can't win with these millions and millions of meme coins and having to come after people that launch these meme coins in that type of environment. Okay, so I would see this the first early signs that this technology is moving so fast that regulators can't catch up. If you've been a long-term listener, you'll know that I believe eventually artificial intelligence and technology will only be able to catch up with other artificial intelligence, and central bankers will become artificial intelligence through central bank digital currencies. Stable coins will become artificial intelligence. Regulators will become artificial intelligence. And eventually there will be no budget because tax collection just becomes unfeasible. And eventually, if we keep this proof of weapon network alive, it will eventually be replaced with an artificial intelligence network that will need proof of work to resist against it. And those that get their chunk of the proof of work network, while Bitcoin's on sale at the moment, by owning more Bitcoin each month, will be the ones that are able to get on the right side and defeat the proof of weapons network as it evolves. And of course, we'll cover it as the whole thing unfolds. But anyway, the SEC said meme coins, we'll leave it to law. It's not within the permit of the SEC. What are they going to focus on next? They're going to be focusing on stable coins. And obviously the Fed will want to get a look in there and then watch the battle ensue. That will take some time. And then they're going to be working on market structure, which means meme coins are unregulated. What's a security? What's a stable coin? What's Bitcoin? When is it a commodity? When is it a security? That's going to be structured so that everybody can have clarity in terms of moving forward as well. So that will be market structure. And then we'll see whether we get this Bitcoin strategic reserve and whether America is going to hedge itself against the Federal Reserve, as I've always been advocating for. And other countries get to front run that. You know, the Middle East can use Bitcoin. BRICS can use it to back up their global South network rather than just using gold. You can solve the problem of the auditability and storage of gold in a distributed ledger system by backing it by an element of Bitcoin. The European Union can use it in order to protect themselves from each individual country in the dismantling of the European Central Bank, which is a Fed-first proof of weapons network institution that has essentially destroyed Europe for the benefit of the American military-industrial complex and raged these wars, which is the Ukraine stuff. We'll cover more of that in the macro section. But anyway, all these countries get to protect themselves, but you don't need to worry what governments do. You can protect yourself anyway, and you can sit outside the system. Now, there were rumors, and I don't know whether this is true because it could just be bad journalism. It's hard to tell the difference unless you're following the money between the truth and reality. But somebody put out there, and so fact check it yourself, that the Biden administration and the US Marshal Service have lost track of the Bitcoins that they are meant to earn that could be transferred as strategic reserves. And this really led off a spark of theories on whether they were stolen or not. I don't know whether there's any truth to it. But either way, that is a story that we will continue to follow, whether it's fake news or not. I guess we may end up in a scenario where Biden, of course, says they were lost in a boating accident and I've lost my mind right now, and they were stored on Hunter Biden's laptop. We shall see. I'm not sure what the truth is to that. I think that we have seen over time that the Silk Road coins, for example, have been sold off. And there were recovered coins which are going to the Bitfinex shareholders after the 2016 hack that I covered earlier. But MicroStrategy, anyway, now, which is now known as Strategy, they're still accumulating Bitcoin into the market. So they accumulated and announced this week another 20,356 Bitcoin. At the time was worth $1.99 billion, has corrected since then. And so they've now acquired, after that, additional 20,365 worth 1.9 billion. That was a price of an average of 97,514 per Bitcoin. Currently, the price is about 80,000. And as of the 23rd of February, 2025, they hold 499,096 Bitcoin. Which they have acquired at a price of approximately valued at approximately 33.1 billion that they've acquired it for, which is an average of 66,357 per Bitcoin. So that's an interesting one to watch. Now, we are seeing more and more fiat currency money printers looking to hedge and join our industry. And remember, I talked about the public companies last week, if you're a long-term watcher. And one of those, as I said, is that GameStop is announcing that it's going to be doing a Bitcoin strategy. And it may be similar to MicroStrategy. It may be different. We shall see. But that is a rumor because they got about $4.6 billion of reserves and a very interesting community of shareholders. Now, remember the whole, short squeeze and manipulation of price. Well, one of those that were firing those financial weapons of mass destruction was the hedge fund manager, Citadel. And Citadel Securities, another division that looks to get into custody, has decided that it's going to be getting into custody of Bitcoin. And it's going to be doing other crypto liquidity providers for major exchanges. So it's looking at getting into market making, aka market manipulation, in the short term. And they're going to be doing liquidity for Coinbase and Binance and crypto.com and other exchanges as they look to basically sign the devil contract with those companies, which is why I wouldn't be storing any funds over there. Full disclosure, I am a shareholder in Coinbase, and it is, but I would still not be storing funds over there, and make sure that if you're doing it in custody, it is segregated from these exchanges, which are using Citadel in order to gauge in market making, in order to do short-term manipulation of prices and all the shenanigans that we are used to. And remember, this announcement was right after the GameStop announcement. So maybe that is a coincidence, but I don't really believe in coincidence as well. Right. Remember, there's another story as we come to the end of the Bitcoin section and transition over to the macro section. But Trump has been suggesting all week that the gold might not be at Fort Knox, and therefore it requires an audit. And him and Elon are going to go there with a camera and find out whether the gold has been stolen, whether it's there, or whatever it may be. Now, this could be taken in two different ways. Firstly, the lesson is, if this was done with Bitcoin like El Salvador does it, then they publish their public address, and you can see all the Bitcoin, and you can see they're adding 1 Bitcoin every day, and they have complete auditability, accountability, let the shareholders of their country, which is the average person that is a citizen contributing tax to that country. So Bitcoin solves that problem. And really is the only path forward in order to add that layer of transparency because you can trust the network. But this could go in one of two directions. Either, as per what I've covered in previous, that this is a strategic weakening of the dollar that we'll cover in the macro section a bit more. And so one way to weaken the dollar so that you can do more onshoring and rebuild your manufacturing base would be to show that there's some gold missing, which is a sign of strength of part of what gives the dollar its strength. And so, it could be a strategy of saying some of the gold's not there, therefore it's a way of weakening the dollar without having something like a Plaza Accord where currencies have to be devalued against each other. I'm not saying that's what's happening, but this is one way of doing it. The other is that Trump maybe knows it's there, and by knowing that it's there, he could decide to strengthen the dollar. And this could be a strategic tool at being able to have some level of control over whether it's devaluing the currency or strengthening the currency based upon all of the tariff strategies that are coming right now. So if Trump knows that the gold isn't there, which I'm sure he would know, I don't think he would do this strategy accidentally and leave it to chance, then this could be a way of weakening or strengthening the dollar, whichever direction it needs to go. This is another tool, again, that goes into my thought process that there may be build as many tools as possible with Treasury as the dismantling of the proof of weapons network with the Federal Reserve is a possibility and a transition. And so anyway, that's a one way of doing it. So I think it becomes an interesting story for us to follow. But the other story to follow, which leads us into our macro section and the other part that we want to cover with Jeffrey Epstein and what that is and how it actually relates to this fiat currency proof of weapons network, is that we had Kash Patel immediately sworn in, and he is now officially a pro-Bitcoin FBI director, which would like to expose many of the constructs of the deep state. And therefore, the first job was to make sure that we get the files on Jeffrey Epstein. Now, that may sound like something that is slightly unrelated, but actually, as you know, all of this plugs into each other. So that's going to do everything on the this week in Bitcoin section in part 1. And we're now going to move over to part 2, where we cover this week in macro. And we're going to start with actually the relevance of the Jeffrey Epstein file drop and how it relates to the construct of the fiat currency proof of weapons network, and how we can look forward to trying to unpack what might come next. So do me a favor. If you enjoyed the Bitcoin section, please can you like, share, retweet. I'm going to grab a little bit of water right now. I'm currently fasting, so I just had a little bit of break on my fast, but I need to make sure I keep my energy up with water. And here's a favor that I'm going to ask for you. So many people watch this video right to the end and are not subscribers on my YouTube channel. So whether you're watching this at X, please head over to my YouTube channel. I am trying slowly like a snail to get over 100,000 subscribers. You'll know that I was on a very fast growth pace. And as soon as I started unearthing certain parts of the proof of weapons network, I got shadow banned. And now if I get over 100,000, I get to review it with a blue check. And now many of what I've been sharing was censored before is now becoming fact. I think we can get a little review. So we had a bunch of you subscribe. Please hit the bell symbol. Please hit all. Please subscribe so that I can reverse the impact of my high growth that then so clearly got suppressed. And I can get that review, and we can get more and more of this message out there so that more and more people are able to protect themselves as we transition to this world of Bitcoin, AI, and CBDCs. So please do that for me right now. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell symbol, hit all if you're already a subscriber. Please do retweet, repost, share, get more people in, add a comment. It helps the algorithm when people do that review. And I'm going to take a bit of water and we're going to go into part 2 this week in macro. Hold there 1 second.